right, let's see if we are live on YouTube. We are live. All right.
And we're starting off with a cat.
Yes.
And now he's like, okay, I'm done. I've done my contractual
My plan worked
obligation.
though. We had a cat in the first shot.
Contractual
He's
obligation.
doing his, Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined, and then he's leaving.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the first Stitch and Bitch live show of 2025. How many years have we been doing this now?
I feel like we started in 2019, so it's been 6 years.
Yeah. We missed our 5-year anniversary. We kind of forgot about it. So we're going on 6 now.
God.
Yeah. Our first show was January 2019.
Really?
Yes.
This is our 6th anniversary. Holy shit.
Yes.
All right. I wasn't in the first one. I don't remember anything. Okay, so welcome to the 6th year anniversary special of Stitch and Bitch. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. And while you're introducing yourselves, please mention what you are working on if you have a craft or anything. I'll go first. This is where on my channel. I'm Rachel. My channel is Kalanati. I read lots of fantasy, science fiction, nonfiction, and these days romance and manga, especially if it's romance by KJ Charles. And today I am dealing with this monstrosity. It's Inside Out. I don't know if Rhea remembers this. Do you remember this thing that I was knitting on?
I think so.
2023.
I think so.
This was.
I think I've seen it.
I started this when I knew I was going to come out and see you, and I needed to have like a small project for the plane. So like I knit a ton of this while I was in Finland. Anyway, I am weaving in all of the ends, which there are so many ends, but I'm going to get this thing done today after a year and a half of working on it. So if I'm looking down all the time, it's because I'm dealing with these little freaking tiny ends. So
I hate weaving in the ends so much. Like I have so many projects that are like technically done and that I'm done knitting them, but like have the ends been woven in? No, because I hate doing that.
The number one reason I have been putting off finishing this is just because there are literally hundreds of ends to weave in because of these little tiny stripes. So and I did my best to not have ends. Like I carried the yarn up the sides.
That's what I'm doing for this one because I'll show it off more when we get there, but like I'm just carrying up the green all the way through because I'm like, I refuse to knit in these to weave in ends.
Yeah. So if I ever make another one of these, I'll do it the way the pattern says to do it in the round rather than flat, and then I will carry every bit of yarn up the inside. But anyway, so that's what I'm working on. Kelsey, you want to go next?
I'm Kelsey. My channel is The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I read mostly fantasy and science fiction, and I am not crafting anything today. You know, I realized like these last couple months, I really should have been working on, remember I bought all that lace trim to put on the lining of that skirt and then never did it.
Mm-hmm.
That should be my next project, but it's going to take like some work to actually get it going before like getting on a live stream with the rote routine sewing of it. And I thought I was going to do it for today and I just didn't. So whoops. What else was I supposed to say? That's me. I'm not crafting. Bye.
Sorry, I have like the memory of like a mosquito at the moment.
You know what? I feel like that's justified this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or any weekend, to be honest.
This weekend has been a whole year so far.
It has.
I feel like that's been January in general. It's like...
Yeah, this January has been like so like it's been 84 years, as they say.
January is like that every year, but this one is just, ugh, yeah.
Last year, maybe it was because I was on holiday and I was traveling, so January went by like whoosh. It's when
Yeah, I
you
mean,
are
you
having
spent like 2 or more weeks of it in New Zealand. So
three weeks.
That's right, because you
and
left around Christmas, right?
Yeah, and the whole month I was on vacation. See, when you're having fun and you don't have to worry about survival, that's when time flies. Suddenly, like when you're in a capitalist hellscape, like a hamster wheel, then suddenly time just like is a never-ending stretch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it'd be like that.
Very
I
much so.
hit the 9-year anniversary of my BookTube channel earlier this month. Made me
Ooh.
feel old. Is that right? 9?
I mean,
Going
you
on
were
a
all like
decade.
I started in 2017, and you were already doing stuff, I think.
Yeah, 9.
Yeah.
9th year.
I started in 2014, like November of 2014. So
you're like 10 years.
I don't really count it anymore since I haven't been actively booktubing in like almost 2
know,
years.
The
But
live shows count a little bit.
I'll keep telling myself that. Anyway, Rhea, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Rhea, and my channel is the Bookfinch, where I nowadays mostly just do the Stitch and Bitch. But actually, this year, I said that this last year as well. But this year, I actually feel like I might be inspired to make some videos, because I actually got some ideas. However, I need to figure out like how to actually fit that into schedule. But yeah. I read mostly fantasy, manga, and books. Sometimes I dip into some sci-fi, and also webtoons. So many shitty webtoons. And yeah, that's about it. I'm crafting my bookmark. It's starting to look like a
Nice.
thistle.
Yeah.
So I'm doing all of the greens first, and then I'm gonna go back and do the purple. So I'm thinking in the next like a couple of live shows, I will be finishing this.
Sure. Di?
Yeah, so my name's Diana. My channel is Bookish Di. I am hoping to maybe film something tomorrow. I'm counting 2024 as a wash. I'm not doing a best of. I had an idea for potentially like incredibly specific awards, but like I don't feel like doing that. The idea just stresses me out at this point because I talked so little about my 2024 reading. So I just want to start fresh. But anyway, I'm still working on this wrap. I'm wrapping up the 4th color, so you can.
Ooh.
This is going to be my office wrap for when the HVAC system is going mad, which happens a lot. Like.
Yeah.
The HVAC system always seems to be like on the fritz. But yeah, I'm very excited. Bye, Luke. At some point, I need to go back and finish that sweater because my goal for this year is to finish the sweater I started in 2021. Yeah. I also bought some new yarn last weekend. I can send you photos because I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be doing a lot of work travel in the next few months. And so I want something that I can work on that is just one color so that I don't have to worry about like scissors and shit on the plane.
Yeah. All right. Hello, Joe and Jill and Mr. Roro.
Ramsey.
Oh, and Ramsey's here.
I'm going to be in London in February. I'm hoping to meet up with Claire because I am doing a work conference in Europe and I'm going to London a little early to help adjust myself to the time difference and also to see people.
That'll be fun.
That will be fun.
It's only for a couple of days, which is sad, but
Other than it being February and like the worst part of winter.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope-
Kew Gardens actually, I saw an ad for it. They do an orchid show that opens on February 1st. And
Oh
the
my God,
theme
you're gonna
this
go
year
to
is
Kew?
Peru. I'm hoping. It's like
I'm so jealous.
I'm just like, okay, this sounds cool. It's outside. I haven't been there. And pretty flowers.
I feel like orchids at Kew Gardens, that it sounds like the most British thing ever.
I know, but it sounds really cool.
I know.
I'm very hopeful.
I kind of want to go to I kind of want to go to Scotland again. But like, let's see when that happens.
So one of the books I'll be talking about when we get to what we're reading, a large portion of it involves this epic, terrible plane flight circa 1920s from London all the way up to Orkney in Scotland. And the entire time I was reading it, I was like, damn, I want to go back to Scotland.
Yeah.
I feel like the universe is telling me I need to go back. I need to hit up the prehistoric settlement stuff in the Orkney Islands.
I've been recently thinking more about, like solo traveling. Because I have not really, like every single time I've gone somewhere, I've always gone with someone. There's been at least one person with me. And I mean, partly that is due to, the chronic ailment stuff. So I kind of need someone to be there as a kind of support. But at the same time, I'm kind of like now is kind of the best chance I have for ever doing like anything solo. It's only downhill from here. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's life. So, Jill says definitely don't come back here in January. It's just cold and wet.
Yeah, that's gonna be short notice.
I've seen some pictures from Scotland in the winter, and you got pretty snow.
I could potentially do Scotland because I'm used to Pacific Northwest winter. Well, kind of used to Pacific Northwest winters now, which are also cold and wet. But I don't know if I could do that little sunshine. Like it's already a struggle.
I live in
Oregon.
I was in Seattle for Christmas, and just like how mild the winters are, I'm like, no wonder I have such a hard time with cold winters. I grew up with like temperate rainy winters like this, where it's not freezing out. It was so nice. And like I thought, I like it's snowing out right now, and I'm like, it's very pretty. But I don't like the cold.
See, I live in the southern coast of Finland, so I'm unfortunately very used to cold and wet and rainy, and also heck ton of sleet and blizzards. So I'm thinking more on the like early autumn side.
I've been bemoaning the fact that I don't really have any friends who live in places that are warm in the winter that I can go visit.
See, my normal go-to is to visit my dad in LA, but like not a good time to visit.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No. Not a good time. All right. Instead of going straight into what we've been reading, what we're currently reading, we're going to do what we are looking forward to in 2025. So I think we said we were going to pick like 3 things each, like new releases for here. I have 4 at least to talk about. I think we should go crazy.
Okay, so you last because I like did a long anticipated releases on my channel, and like I have more of them for the second half of the year that weren't in that video, and I haven't picked which ones I'm using for this live stream, and I assume we're all gonna have a bunch of overlap, so everyone should go first, and then I can say what.
I'm also going to adjust my list based on if we're gonna have overlap.
I mean, I can go first because I can guarantee you a couple of things on my list are not on yours because I have some nonfiction that sounds particularly interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing on my list is actually something I just added like a couple of days ago. So it's called Bad Company, Private Equity and the Death of the American Dream by Megan Greenwell. So Megan Greenwell is a journalist, and she used to edit Deadspin. So for folks who don't know what Deadspin is/was, it was the sports site for Gizmodo, Geo Media before private equity bought the company, and they didn't like what the team at Deadspin was doing, so they fired editors. People left in protest, and a lot of the people who worked at Deadspin now run Defector, which is a creator-owned news/commentary site, which is really good. I really recommend checking out Defector. So it sounds really interesting. We talk a lot about, like, in general, about the enshittification of companies. We just got news that Joann's Fabric is declaring bankruptcy for like the second. Yeah, I think news broke yesterday. And so, like, a lot of these kind of institutions are being bought by private equity that then ransack them and leave them just shells of themselves. So I think it sounds really interesting, and it sounds like it will explain a lot about what's going on in the US these days. So I'm looking forward to that. That comes out on June 10th. Another nonfiction book that I'm looking forward to, and this is one I think I found because a friend had added it to their want to read, and this comes out on February 18th. It is American Poison, A Deadly Invention and the Woman Who Battled for Environmental Justice, and it's about the woman who fought against leaded gasoline. And
Ooh.
yeah,
It
so
sounds interesting.
yeah, and it's one of those things that, you know, lead's been out of gas for decades now, but I think it definitely affected the generations that were surrounded by leaded gas, and I think it'll be an interesting kind of environmental social justice book. And then the two nonfiction books that I'm looking forward to this year. Sorry, I have something stuck in my throat. So the first is Kate Elliott's The Witch Roads. I have been a Kate Elliott fan for a very long time now, and at a signing that she did a couple of years ago, she had mentioned working on a fantasy book that sold, and it was going to be split in two to be a duology. So I've been waiting for this book to come out for a couple of years, and I'm really excited. We finally have a release date both for The Witch Roads and the sequel. It sounds really interesting. And I'm glad that Kate Elliott's getting back to her fantasy roots.
This one
And
looks really cool.
It
Like
looks
the
really
cover
I
is like
think it looks pretty interesting too. I
lavender.
didn't before.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. I think I can't wait to read it and get my hands on it. And then the last book I have is The Unmapping by Denise S. Robbins. So just kind of disclaimer, this is the first book that's going to be published by Mareas, which is Marinessa's bindery imprint. So I've been, as a member of her bindery, I've been seeing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And so The Unmapping is like a speculative climate disaster where all of a sudden, like, overnight things start moving. So like streets will shift, landmarks will move, and this follows two people who work in New York City's disaster relief office, I believe, emergency management team, and like dealing with these streets and these locations moving, but also their personal crises. And it just sounds really interesting. And like I said, I've been seeing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and so seeing her go through manuscripts and choosing this, and then kind of the cover design process and how they got that cover that they did, which I really like. I think it looks really cool.
It's
and really
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. That comes out on July 3rd.
I had not heard of that, and that sounds like such an interesting idea.
Her second book is also coming. Marinessa's second pick is coming out this year as well, and that's going to be more historical fiction.
What did you say her like bindery imprint or whatever it's called?
Mareas. So Mareas.
Aha, Mareas, bindery books.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was a thing. I'm like so
Yeah.
far behind on bindery and stuff.
Yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been interesting kind of watching it, because when bindery started, like a lot of folks in Marinessa's Discord, we had a lot of questions because it's like, this sounds like it could be a scam. And before she became like one of their tastemakers, so the people who have essentially a Patreon on bindery, she met with the folks there and talked to them, and we had questions, so she asked the questions that she had, and that's how she got involved with bindery.
Cool.
Very neat. I have to keep an eye on that.
Mm,
Yeah, I think
I
I would
could
definitely
go-
check out the unmapping. That sounds.
I
really
could go next because
could go next.
I also feel that I might have some books that like I feel like I have one that is on everyone's list, but like
Go.
Okay. So I'll start with the obvious one, Queen Demon by Martha Wells, the second book in
What?
the Rising World. It has
Yeah.
now
Been
a
announced?
cover.
It's
They
been
have
announced.
It's gonna come out on October 7th. It has a cover. It looks really cool. So Queen Demon is like very high on my list. I'm gonna be really excited when that comes out.
How did I not
Just
know?
now learning this, Rachel. We've known this for like a couple months.
Nobody said anything.
We thought you knew.
We thought you knew. You're pretty
I don't know
keen in on
anything.
Martha Wells. But yeah, that's like one of my top like picks. So and then the other one is Neon Yang is coming up with another novel. So it's called Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame. So it's like a fantasy novel, or rather it's a novella, and it's like about a dragon slayer who never takes the armor off in public. So it's kind of like Mandalorian inspired in a sense. So it like I like masked heroes, okay? Or in this case, masked heroines. And because it's like Neon Yang, I expect that it will deconstruct a lot of gender topics and stuff. So I'm really excited, and I'm really happy that they are like having another like bigger publication. They've been working a lot with like short fiction, like short stories, and been in anthologies and stuff. But I feel like they haven't like had any like their own proper like release in like recently. So really happy.
Their first novel.
They
came
had
out.
a novel. It
They
was
had a
Genesis
novel
of
come out like a
Misery.
couple years ago, like not last year, but I think the year before that. And other than that, because they went quite silent in social media due to like they had a
There was
A
that whole
situation.
thing that happened
yeah.
Yeah.
that was if you were there, you remember.
Yeah, there was an implosion, but I'm happy they're back. So,
That's good.
Um,
That's good.
and then I'm also looking forward to Scotch on the Rocks by Elliot Fletcher, which is the second book in the Macabre Brothers trilogy. So it is the continuation to Whiskey Business, which follows the other brother that we got introduced to in Whiskey Business, and it's kind of like a enemies to lovers, forbidden romance type thing. So excited about that. That's coming out in I think June or July.
This reminds me, I've got an Irish one to talk to you about today.
And then, well, if we're doing 4, then the last one I have is The Amber Owl by Juliette Marillier, which is expected to be published in February this year. And it's basically like kind of like a woman is living alone in the woods, essentially in a cabin, and her life gets disrupted by like a war and these like soldiers coming into the woods, and like and it's like soft fantasy, so kind of like more in the fabulism type. But I like Juliette Marillier, so I'm really excited about this as well. So those are my picks.
Cool. I don't know if I can keep it to just 3.
We've all done 4 now, so
Okay. Well, I have 4. There are a couple I decided to not mention because they're such big releases that people know about them, like The Martian Contingency, for example. Like everybody knows that's coming out, but and I'm not
like people coming from Book Talk might not know because I feel like that series isn't popular.
It hasn't come out in a little while. Well, I'm just going to talk about books, and you can cut me off if you think I'm going on for too long. I can't do summaries, and my brain's not on enough to do summaries. So, The Martian Contingency by Mary Robinette Kowal. I cannot wait for this. It's the continuation of the Lady Astronaut series. And I think we're getting back to the main character in this one. I can't remember, but either way, it's going to be a chunky historical sci-fi thing. And I think they actually are getting off the planet, and it's going to be really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. There's also going to be another white space novel by Elizabeth Bear. And for some reason, this science fiction series just does it for my brain. I haven't gotten into a lot of Bear's other science fiction, but this is like the epic mystery and space sort of stuff. So the third one, called Folding Space, is coming out this year after I think 2 or 3 years of delays. It's been announced and the release dates keep changing. So it looks like it's finally coming out, and I have it pre-ordered, so it better show up.
What was the name again?
Folding Space.
All right.
And then for some stuff that's maybe a little bit lighter, I hope. A couple of years ago, Sangu Mandana had a book come out. It's called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which a lot of people really loved. And there's another book in, I think it's the same series. So about witches and Britain and stuff, but it's called A Witch's Guide to a Magical Innkeeping. And it's another one that's been announced for a couple of years, and it's finally coming out. And yeah, I think it's supposed to be like gentle contemporary fantasy with witches and cozy mystery and a bit of a dash of romance in there as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. One that I know was on Kelsey's anticipated releases list is the Murder by Memory by Olivia Waite, which I also took a moment to think, wait a minute, where do I know Olivia Waite's name from? Not from science fiction. No, from sapphic romance.
She's also, I don't know if you're all aware that for a while she's been the
romance columnist,
romance book reviewer for the New York Times.
Really?
And
Oh, wow.
I really enjoy reading her reviews.
Huh. I didn't know.
They did not cover romance at all before they brought her on for that. And
I can totally see why she'd be a great reviewer. I thought, what was the first one I read by her? The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics. Yeah. I loved that book, and that was smart.
Her column with the New York Times covers a wide range of romance, which I appreciate. Like
it's a really smart selection every time.
You can tell it's someone who has like a really deep love of the genre and its history, as well as like what's currently being published.
Cool. Yeah. I need to make a note of that because maybe I'll get some good recommendations there. So Murder by Memory is a novella. It looks like it's the beginning of a series called the Dorothy Gentleman series. And the little blurb says it's a memory called Empire meets Miss Marple in this cozy spaceborne mystery, helmed by a no-nonsense formidable auntie of a detective.
Oh, wow.
Yes, please.
This reminds me, I kind of want to reread Memory Called Empire.
It's even better upon reread.
I bet.
Yeah.
That's one of the books that I own but haven't read.
And then the last
But
one that
then
I-
you get to experience it completely for the first time.
Yes.
Yes. It's so good. And the last thing I'll mention is Esperance by Adam Oyabanji. I read his debut science fiction novel a year or two ago. It was called Breaking Day, and I thought it was really interesting. It was kind of like one of those generation ship is reaching its destination. They're getting ready for the breaking day when they start slowing down and flip around and approaching their destination. And it's sort of like, who is this mysterious woman on the ship and should she be there or not? So he's coming back with another sci-fi novel, another mystery science fiction novel. And from what I gather, it's kind of one of those, detective on a spaceship, murders happen, look into things. But I thought that he was a really strong writer with only like 2 novels under his belt at that time. I was just really interested in it. So I don't need to know much about Esperance. I'm going to pick it up and I'll probably enjoy it. And that's it for me. So Kelsey.
You made
Kelsey,
it
go
so
ahead.
hard for me because I thought that between the 3 of you were going to pick more of my list, and now I have to really narrow this down. I'm just going to shamelessly promote my own YouTube video where I have posted and anticipated releases for the first half of the year, and I have like more than 20 books on that list.
It's a lot of good stuff. You should watch it. Yes.
So I'm not going to focus on things in the first half of the year that are in that video, because go watch that. But someone in the comments of that video mentioned something that I didn't know about and would have been on that list if I'd known about it beforehand, which is that there's going to be a new Grace Lynn middle grade book called The Gate, the Girl, and the Dragon. Grace Lynn is the author who did Where the Mountain Meets the Moon and those 3 companion novels that are like middle grade inspired by Chinese folklore. Did any of you read those back in the day? They're just very beautiful, folklore, mythology inspired middle grade books that I really loved. So I was very excited to learn that she's doing another book that's hopefully sort of like that.
What was the title?
The Gate, the Girl, and the Dragon. So like, what's the release date on that? That's going to be May 13th. And that missed getting into my video because I did not know about it at the time. Other than that, like if I had to pick my number 1 book that was in that video, I would go with Among Ghosts by Rachel Hartman, which is YA set in the same world as Serafina and Tess of the Road, but I think in like an earlier era of history, so it's not going to directly connect to those 2 duologies. And I'm just extremely excited for new Rachel Hartman always. And then in the second half of the year, there's going to be a new... See, I think this might be the year that I sort of lean into reading more of the spooky books that I've kind of avoided for a long time. And Silvia Moreno Garcia is going to have a new spooky book called The Bewitching. It looks like it's following, like, it's a multi-generational saga about 3 women who are all involved in witchy things. So there's going to be like a historical element to it and like a spooky horror witchy element to it. very intrigued by that. And another author I would not have expected. Well, I don't actually know if this is going to be spooky. I know it's going to be a ghost story, but Freya Marsk has a new book coming out in October that is like a ghost story retelling of Cinderella called Cinderhouse, where Cinderella is like a ghost haunting her stepmother's house.
Oh, cool.
And it says it's like, Goodreads is saying that it's still like a romance. So maybe, I don't know if she'll be able to come back to life or something and it won't be spooky horror. But still like, so that's my sort of ghosty, spooky theme of books. I could keep going. Do you want me to keep going?
Speaking of things that usually end up having some sort of horrific element, but I'll still read them. Ursula Vernon's got another book coming out in 2025.
Was it the Hemlock and something?
Yeah,
I don't even know what it's about. I'm gonna pre-order it and get it, but I bet you that there's gonna be something slightly disturbing in it, and I'm okay with that.
One book I forgot to mention that's coming out this year is E.K. Johnston has a sequel coming out to Aetherbound called Sky on Fire. So Aetherbound came out in 2021, and it's like science fantasy. The Fisher King meets the collapse of the Newfoundland cod fisheries.
Oh yeah, I remember you talking about that.
And I liked it. I thought it, like, well, I mean, that's one thing that she's talked about is, like, it is like both of those as inspiration. Definitely look up the collapse of the cod fisheries. It's actually really interesting. But she had talked like a couple of years ago about wanting to do a sequel, but not knowing if her publisher would buy it. And they ended up buying it, and it's, I think, still drawing on Arthurian myth. So the main character, I think, is like a Morgan Le Fay inspired character. The cover looks really cool, so I'm very interested to see what book 2 is about.
I mean, we could talk about new releases until the cows come home, but we should probably also talk about all of the stuff that we have been reading.
I have
past month.
Yeah. So, okay, while I post the stuff to chat, last call for people's stuff that they're looking forward to, additional things. If anybody in the chat wants to chime in as well, go for it. I need a minute to catch up here.
Another thing for the second half of the year that I'm very excited for is, I think it's going to be a novella. It's going to be a Tor.com novella from Annalee Newitz called Automatic Noodle.
What?
Automatic Noodle?
Somebody find that for me, please.
It's about robots opening a noodle shop.
The cover looks really cool.
Oh, okay.
I'm sold just based on that title and cover alone.
Not an anticipated book, but an anticipated TV show. It looks like Murderbot's coming out in May.
Yes, I will absolutely be reviving my Apple TV subscription for a month to watch that and season 2 of Severance.
Yeah, I'm probably going to cancel or like pause my Netflix subscription because like I barely use it. And the reason I had it was I was like the family Netflix person, but then they did their stupid password sharing crackdown. So like I'll probably watch a couple of things that have been on my like to watch list and then just cancel Netflix for a while.
Netflix is actually probably the only streaming service that I have on as a yearly subscription, and all of the rest are just like with Amazon Prime, I've done the thing where I do the free trial and I cancel, and I basically wait until Amazon Prime starts begging me to come back, and then I wait until they start giving like suggesting for me a new free trial, and then I wait until they extend the free trial, and then I subscribe again.
Smart.
And then I cancel.
Yeah, my Amazon comes from my aunt. Netflix and Dropout are the only streaming services I pay for, and of the two of them, Dropout is a much better bang for my buck.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay, I'm done frantically posting things in chat. Want to talk about what we're currently reading and what we have read?
Yeah.
Does anybody have a burning desire to go first?
I could go first because I have read something, but I feel like I have read less than other people. So
I'm going to warble on for quite a while, so I'll probably go last. So, Rhea, you're up.
okay, so I have finished 4 books in January, and I'm currently reading one, and then there's webtoons. But like I reread Mammoths at the Gates by Nivo, kind of refreshing my memory for this one, even though on hindsight this actually I did not need to read Mammoths at the Gates to enjoy this one, because the character that appears in Mammoths at the Gates is only mentioned in like passing on the first page. But the refresh did give me some context of like in the continuity of where the Brides of High Hill is like based. So Mammoths at the Gates, really, once again, really liked it the first time. Not my favorite in the Singing Hill cycle. However, the Brides of High Hill is like in my top 3 now of the Singing Hill cycle. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the gothy vibes. I have always liked the Kitsune Gumiho type stories, and this reminded me also the Finnish werewolf myth about like brides becoming basically wolves and eating their husbands. This kind of like idea.
Spoilers.
But well, it's like a legend, but it's like this has like a very different spin on it. It also like reminds me of Bluebeard. Like you have to like read it. Like this kind of has 2 horror stories competing for dominance of like, so you have kind of the Bluebeard, but you have kind of the other horrific elements. So it's like, it's interesting. I feel like you can't really spoil this one, even if you give like the basic premise, because you have to experience it for yourself. I have not read anything like this. Like, even though I'm very familiar with kind of the tropes that this is inspired by, I just really liked it. Like fantastic. I mean, everything compares to like Empress of Salt and Fortune, so you know but this one is like amazing, and I can't wait to see if any of the characters show up in future books. So
I think we could probably like do personality tests based on our ranking of the Singing Hill cycle books, because I think it says a lot about us which ones we put like our top 3 of. Like the Brides one, not my favorite, but Mammoths at the Gates, yes.
For me, these are like up there. Mammoths at the Gate is maybe like 4th.
See, for me, it's Empress of Salt and Fortune, Mammoths at the Gate, and then the Brides of Foxhall, the Brides, and then 4th is When the Tiger Came Down, and 5th is the
Riverlands.
Yeah, that one.
Which I actually really liked. Like that. I
like that.
I mean, I
liked it, but it still is probably near the bottom of my list because I liked them all.
It was the weakest for me. Like, it's good and I liked it, but for me, it's the weakest.
I mean, to be fair, Nivo is only like competing in like every book is excellent. It's just that like what the ranking. Like for me, it's like Empress of Salt and Fortune. Then I think it's the Brides of High Hill. Then When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. Then Mammoths at the Gates and Into the Riverlands. And I really liked Into the Riverlands. I really liked it.
Am I like the only one who didn't really like? I have almost no memory of When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain.
I really liked that one, but I read Into the Riverlands and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain out of order. I don't know if that affected my experience at all. For me, Mammoths at the Gates is number 1. Empress of Salt and Fortune is number 2. And When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain might be number 3. And then I'm not sure how the others.
Hello, Maya. Yeah, okay.
See,
I'm
Maya,
apparently the weirdo because everyone is like When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain.
I am not at all surprised that Maya likes When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, because it's probably I would say that it's probably the gothiest out of all of them. Even comparing to the Brides of High Hill, I think like
When the Tiger is gothic.
Yeah.
Versus goth.
Yeah, because like When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain has that it has a lot of tension because of the characters kind of like sitting in isolation and telling the stories, and you never know what is gonna like when the tension is gonna snap and the things are gonna start happening, and like it's kind of like that framing story in the 1001 Nights with Sherazad. Like you have to buy time.
I didn't really like it because like my memory of it is tell me a really good story so I won't eat you, and I'm not really into the eat you.
See, I kind of like that. Okay, the next book I read, or rather finished, I have started it like many moons ago, but I finally finished Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall, and I liked it. I do feel like there are points where this book kind of overstays its welcome. It really likes the Austen-y prose, and like sometimes I feel like you could maybe cut some of the more dialogue heavy scenes where they don't really do anything else than to re-establish what has happened with the characters. It's re-establishing the like emotional state of the characters, and I'm kind of like, well, we know what the emotional and there's like so many scenes between the Duke of Annandale and the main protagonist where I'm like, we're rehashing your relationship that is not progressing anywhere. I'm getting really frustrated. However, I still enjoyed it. I like the Fae kind of, because this has a first-person narrator who is narrating for other characters. So the first-person narrator is a character in the story, but is not actually the person driving the plot. Their existence is solely to be the storyteller, and they're kind of like making these jokes and commenting and breaking fourth wall and kind of they're like a Fae. So that was interesting. And there was actually like, let's see if I can really quickly find it, but there was like really there was like a really fun line when they go and meet Miss Mitchellmore, who is the main character, her grandfather, and he is introduced like this: the Earl was a man of somewhat fixed habits. Bear in mind, this story takes place in 1815. The Earl was a man of somewhat fixed habits. He had stopped updating his dress in the 1790s, his home in the 1780s, and his opinions in the 1770s. And like, this is basically like I know exactly what this character is based on just that one line. And it's excellent. I really enjoyed it. So I'm actually looking forward to reading the other book, like the companion novel to this, that is focusing on the cousin of the main character. So enjoyed it. Not like a perfect book, but if you're like looking forward to kind of like Jane Austen type dialogue and like Regency era sapphic romance, maybe give it this go. It's pretty neat. And then going to something completely different, I finished Evocation by S.T. Gibson. This is the first book in the Summoner cycle. I will say, this book kind of starts in the middle of a conflict that has already been established in a previous short story / novella. So I would actually go ahead and say that you should probably read the novella first and then read this if you want to pick up the series, because like I was a little bit confused. Like you get over it and it is explained somewhat, but like this book kind of feels like it has the expectation that you already come in with the knowledge of that first book, even though it's like a 0.5 in the series essentially. But this is essentially kind of like it's a story about an occult society in Boston. So it's set in modern times, and there are these like people in an occult society, like, you know, summoning demons and stuff. It has like dark academia vibes. And the first book is like following mostly David, and then there are 2 other point of view characters as well, and each book kind of follows the story of one specific character. In like the next book is gonna follow Reese, who is introduced in this one. So this has topics of ethical non-monogamy. It covers stuff just such as like alcohol addiction, etc. And it's pretty good. I enjoyed it. I read it in like a week or so it kept its pace. I will say that some aspects of the story are not really interrogated very well. Like, for example, one of the protagonists, like point of view characters, is a Black woman, and I feel like she does a lot of like emotional labor for the white protagonist that I don't think was interrogated or deconstructed that well. I mean, it isn't the worst thing there, but I feel like there would need I felt like it would have been cool if there would have been like more acknowledgement of the fact, especially considering that the main protagonist is like a man of like an immense generational wealth and privilege, and I feel like that also wasn't addressed enough, how his access to resources and wealth was also affecting the other characters and their like dynamic and relationships. So that was like my main like I didn't really get to the escapism part of the book because I kept thinking like, well, you know, this needs to be interrogated more, but I'm hoping that it might get interrogated more in the upcoming books where we actually get to like the perspective, like the main perspective is gonna be on the other characters. So I'm kind of like giving it a little bit of a side eye, but hoping that the next installments are gonna be better at this, because I really liked S.T. Gibson's Dowry of Blood, where I think she deconstructed a lot of the more problematic elements of Dracula like really well. So I am optimistic. And then I am currently reading The Seep by Channa Porter. I am about 65 pages in, and so far it is really weird. It is basically an alien invasion with spores. And I don't know what to tell you. It is weird. I feel like I will have to read this and then sit with it, because it's like the idea is that the aliens kind of like you get them into your system from like drinking water and stuff. So they're like these microorganisms, and then the aliens like affect your ability to feel things. So suddenly you are not as concerned with sadness or like anger and stuff. You can still feel those things, but they are kind of like they're kind of suppressed. And then they also can overwrite your DNA with like long exposure. And it's this idea of how that changes society and stuff. It's weird, but I'm kind of like I'm not hating it. I'm not hating it. So yeah, that's my reading so far. And there's webtoons, but you know, they're still the same webtoons as previously. So
I just assume we don't have a proper update on the woman who got gaslit into getting back with the guy that she faked her own death to get away from, and he's still, for some reason, the love interest.
well, the update is that they got back together.
I remember you told us that.
Yeah. And
He
now
convinced her.
the main male character has recently been kidnapped by his political enemies. So now the main female character has to go save him. Yeah, that is where we currently are.
Let him
Yeah.
die on the side of a road.
I know. And for some reason, there's gonna be there was some kind of demonic summoning circle, and I'm like, where did this come from? Like, when did we get?
This is like finding out that Bones and Sleepy Hollow were in the same universe. There was a crossover episode, Rachel.
No.
This was after I stopped watching both of those shows. There was a Bones Sleepy Hollow crossover.
Wow.
Was this the last season of Bones that I did not watch?
Probably. I mean,
Sleepy Hollow didn't last very long either.
I stopped watching Bones when Brennan got pregnant because they were like, because I hated Booth, and two,
Yeah,
it felt
same.
like they were speed running a lot of relationship stuff, and three, I hate Sealy Booth.
Thank you, Maya. Yes. What?
Yeah, it's something that happened. I don't try to explain it.
Wow, I had no idea about this, but then again, I stopped watching Bones even before Brennan got pregnant, because I just like I just felt like as the show went on, it started to get more and more mean-spirited somehow.
Yeah.
I don't really remember. I watched Bones up until after the baby was born. But then I stopped, and I don't know if I intentionally stopped or if I just didn't have access to it anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
But-
rewatched some Bones a couple of years ago because I wanted to watch one of their holiday episodes, and then it turned into me watching some episodes on like Brennan family lore with her mom and dad. And I'm like, see, I liked that stuff. I like the Jeffersonian team. I just cannot stand Sealy fucking Booth. And part of it is his actor, but part of it is I hate how like it does the thing with straight romance where the man is like super dismissive of the woman and what she wants, and like
Yep. Oh, sunshine.
We're having
hippie.
our first.
I liked Booth and Brennan together back in the day, but that is like 15, 16-year-old me thinking, not adult me. So, yeah.
I will say I think part of the problem too is that I didn't like Angel, and he's played by the same actor.
Same.
David
Same,
Boreanaz,
I-
yeah. I remember liking a lot of the side characters on Angel, but the main character, meh.
I feel like
I
that's one of
liked-
the yeah.
I basically liked every single other character. Like, I liked Angel despite Angel, basically. And I'm still not forgiving Joss Whedon for what they did to Charisma Carpenter. I will forever
See,
That's
be
why I
on the
stopped
boat
watching
that
Angel, because I started
read
watching
between
it
the
in
lines
college,
through that
and then I
guy.
found out what happened with.
I found out
Cordelia.
about
Fuck
Charisma Carpenter and a lot of that while I was in the middle of watching Angel, and so it was like I can never. Some parts of it I'm like I just can't think of it the
See,
same.
the thing is, when you don't know and you're watching it, you're kind of like, okay, this is weird. And then when you know what happened behind the scenes and are watching Angel, and you're like, okay, this is so gross now. Like,
Oh,
This
yeah.
is what.
Like,
This
so
is why
gross.
I can't rewatch Castle. Just finding out how much of a dick Nathan Fillion was to stand up.
Yeah, and now it makes me so sad. I was a huge fan of Castle for
I love
years.
Castle. Like Castle for me is what, like Castle and Kate, like Richard and Kate were like what Booth and Brennan were for people. Like I loved
Yeah.
them together. Like their chemistry worked. I liked their characters together. I liked their relationship. And then the final season, like we didn't know it at the time, but like the fact that they were separated and the vibes were so weird and so off. And then finding out like the behind the scenes stuff, I'm like, oh, that explains it. Like I hate this. I'm
Yeah.
like, that was a show where the fandom was glad it was canceled because they announced like if it got renewed, Stana and the Black ME were leaving. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
why would you renew the show at that point? Just cancel it. Put it out of its misery.
Oh, Lainey, that was her
Lainey,
name.
yeah.
I
Kate
loved
Lane-
her.
She was so good. But yeah, like Castle's one of those where it's like I probably could rewatch it, but like knowing the behind the scenes stuff just really sours it and has really soured me on Nathan Fillion as an actor.
Yeah.
I keep thinking I'm going to rewatch Firefly, and then I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon, Nathan Fillion.
And Nathan Fillion.
Who
but yeah,
else?
those were the books that I have read. So whoever wants to go next, feel free. And
Hermes!
I managed to cajole him.
For a brief second of time, we had 3 cats.
Now
Oh,
now
what?
I don't
I don't
want to
know.
move.
I don't know if
I
Leia
need
will
to
be
run to the
making it.
bathroom, so someone else needs to talk about books while they do that. While I do
can
that.
go.
Di, are you going to be talking about this one?
I'll wait till
I
you get
will
back.
also be talking about this one. Please wait until I get back.
Okay, so Adam Baldwin.
No,
can-
I can't take it today.
Adam Baldwin's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So what I read, so I actually read like a bunch at the end of December. So I read I can't remember if I read this in time. I read Navigational Entanglements by Aliette de Bodard. That one was fun. I didn't like it. I think I like the world building in the Julia verse more, but that's because I've had more time to like sit with the world building with like
Mhm.
reading the other stuff. But I enjoyed Navigational Entanglements. If she wants to revisit that world, I wouldn't be upset. Like I will say the romance was a little bit like too fast for me. Like I would have liked there to be more build up. Like it went from like I don't know you, I'm not sure if I trust you to I love you like very quickly. So that
I totally think that's the thing that's happened multiple times in books by de Bodard.
Yeah.
So,
So I think that's just something that she does and that she likes that like that's not something that necessarily works for me. But overall I liked it. I read Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Jelly Clark. I can't remember if I talked about it last month.
Rhea
It's been a
and I
while.
talked about it.
I talked about it last month, so
Yeah.
so I think we had a discussion about
Okay.
it because I had a very interesting reading experience with it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I read Shauna McGuire's Marvel tie-in, which, for better or worse, is a very Shauna and McGuire novel. Like it was fine. I'm saying this as a Shauna, like someone who enjoys her writing. It was very like middle of the road IP novel. It was an interesting thought experiment, but the pacing was like it was very weirdly paced as well. So if you're interested in like a what if Scarlet Witch got raised with Peter Parker as his adopted sister, read it, but like you're not missing much. I finally read When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole after having it on my shelf for years, and I liked it, but it also reinforced to me that I'm really not a thriller reader. Like I think for me, thrillers aren't like a genre that I generally vibe with. And I think part of it is I thought the ending felt a little like tonally different than the rest of the book. And I don't know if anyone here has read it. It was her first thriller. It was like Get Out, like the main character lives in a gentrifying neighborhood in Brooklyn and her neighbors are disappearing and she's looking into it. And the ending got very like kind of shoot 'em up in a way that felt very weird compared to the rest of the novel.
I had started it back in the day, but I was really in the groove with some of her romance novellas that I was really liking, and it was just so different that I put it down and
think-
didn't get further with it.
I think I prefer her romances. And I think it's just like I'm not really a thriller person. Like I enjoyed the story that was being told. The ending didn't really work for me. And I thought it was like an interesting premise, and what she was doing with it was interesting. But yeah, it just, that genre I don't think is for me. Let's see. This one was fun. The Village Library Demon Hunting Society by C.M. Wagoner. Like this one, like this is a case where it's like a 3-star book, but it's fun. Like it's not a bad 3-star book. Like it's a fun 3-star book, but it's not something I necessarily want to feel the urge to revisit. So the premise.
I have to comment on the title. That title sounds like an isekai, like anime, like you know.
So the premise of this book is so there's this librarian, and she's moved from like southern Florida to a tiny town in upstate New York, and there's all these, murders, and she's investigating, and she like gets all these confessions, and then this new priest moves in, and he's like, okay, it's a little weird that there's all these murders. And she like doesn't think too much of it until her love interest gets murdered, and her cat starts talking because he is possessed by the spirit of Thomas Cromwell.
What?
The cat is named Sir Thomas Cromwell.
Thomas Cromwell, of all people? What?
And it turns out that there's a demon who really liked Murder, She Wrote, that like ran out of stories and is like recreating murder mysteries. And it's very much like, the premise is like, what if the cozy mystery series you liked was actually happening because a demon was born? Like, I had fun. It was.
But why Cromwell though? You could
So
have
it was the guy
historical
from Wolf
figure.
Hall, not the guy who fought in the English Civil War. It was Wolf Hall dude.
So when anybody says Cromwell now, I think of the hot dude who played him in The Tudors, which is probably not what they want to come to mind.
See, there are a couple of Cromwells in the British history, and none of them are great, but they are kind of ranked from least shit to most shit. And the Civil War Cromwell is the worst.
Yes. No, this is the one that Rachel's thinking of.
Okay, Tudor Cromwell.
The reign of Henry VIII.
Yeah, okay.
Cromwell.
What was the name of the book again?
The Village Library Demon Hunting Society.
Village Library.
Like, it is very much like, if you like cozy mysteries, you will probably like this. Like you can tell it comes from someone who does have a deep love of the cozy mystery genre, but kind of wants to poke fun at it a little.
This is right
okay.
now.
I'm
This is
adding
what
it.
I really want to read right now.
Yeah, I'm adding it.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it. Like it was like I said, it's one of those cases where it's like,
You're gonna fall.
yeah, I rated it 3 stars, but like it was a good 3 stars. And then let's see, I read Bujold's The Spirit Ring, which was I think her first fantasy.
Yes.
Yeah, I read that a few years ago.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting in like the conversations, I feel, the cyclical conversations we have about like what is or isn't YA, because this definitely felt like older,
like something that would have been published as YA if it had been published now, but it wasn't. It was published like in the 90s.
Yeah, or like it read to me like almost like YA that would have been published in the late 90s, early 2000s, before the big YA boom.
Was it published in the 90s or the 80s? Because
it was like late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
I think it was. Let me look it up.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I can definitely. I think it wasn't as
92.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
But I enjoyed it. It was interesting. And then the last thing I read in December was Road to Ruin by Hannah Lee. This is a debut novel, and it's like Mad Max Fury Road, but magic. And the premise is there's like this magic called the spark, and it comes out in different ways. And so the person, our main character, Jen, she can like start electronics essentially, and so she has this mage bike that she rides across the waste, and she's a courier, and she's like smuggling letters between a magicless prince and a princess in a different city, and the princess is like, I'm being forced to marry, get me out of here. And so they run away, and like complications ensue. And Jin, our main character, is like having this bisexual panic moment of, she's like, I'm attracted to the prince, but also I'm really attracted to the princess. And I'm like, okay, this is your moment. Make it polyamory, like true polyamory. So I'm hoping that it happens. I'm hoping that it happens.
Polycule.
I'm hoping that happens in book 2. Like, I don't think I'm because both of those characters, like both the prince and the princess, are they've been writing letters to each other and have like got an attraction that way, but they're also both attracted to Jen. So I'm like, okay, like book 2, I think this could happen. But it was fun. I think it worked well as a debut novel. I thought the characters were really interesting. The world was, I think, fleshed out, but also there was room to do more in the sequel. I thought like it resolved the book's conflict, but it left the door open for what's happening in the second book. So I would say, like, I don't know if the author qualifies for the Astounding because she's had some short stories, but they might have just been released in 2024 or 2023. So I might nominate her for the Astounding.
I missed, what book are we talking about?
Road to Ruin by Hannah Lee.
Road to Ruin. I might want to read this. I'm kind of like starting to really appreciate a lot of the like books that have like more polyamory. Like for example, in Evocation, I really liked that we had a bisexual, like one of the point of view characters is a bisexual guy who has on page like relationships with people from multiple genders, because sometimes I feel like bisexual representation tends to be more focused on bisexual women, and then bisexual men usually are relegated.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and bisexual men usually are relegated to like male relationships. Anyway, continue.
Anyway, I think you would probably like this one, Rhea. It's fun. Like, it's very much like, I don't know if I would necessarily classify it as a romp, but it very much like has similar vibes to Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay, this character in the cover has a motorbike helmet that is a skull.
Yes.
Hell yes. I'll see if I can read that.
This is one where I probably won't read it, but I need an update on the series and how this polycule forms or how it does not form.
So it is a duology, and book 2 comes out this year, so I'm gonna pre-order it and see how it goes.
Yeah, book 2 is gonna be called Flight of the Fallen.
Yeah.
When is that coming out? How long do we have to wait for the?
I think it's June.
June 10th.
God, that's so far away.
But I really like these covers, man.
Yeah, the covers are great.
Okay. Color me intrigued.
Yeah. So before I get into City of Glass, because that will, I guess, pass the baton off to Kelsey. This month I've reread Pride and Prejudice, and then I read 2 nonfiction books. So the first one was Racial Innocence: Unmasking Latino Anti-Black Bias in the Struggle for Equality, which it was interesting. It's very much like a primer. So it's kind of talking about anti-Blackness in the Latino community, both like against Afro-Latinos, but also against Black Americans in general. And it kind of deconstructs the myth that this is something that Latinos learn when they come to the US. And it's very much like, no, this is something that is really ingrained in Latino culture and like the construction of Latinidad as an identity. She focuses, so the author is a legal scholar, and she focuses a lot on U.S. case law as well as what happened in Puerto Rico, just because Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, and so it follows the same U.S. anti-discrimination laws, and so it does have legal documents that she can use. I think one of the weaknesses in this book in particular is it's because it's so focused on that, it doesn't really talk about like the generation of anti-Black bias in other countries and Latin America. Like it briefly mentions that in Argentina, it's like Argentina is seen like one of the better Latin American countries because it is so white, and that's because they kicked out all the Black Argentinians and moved them into Uruguay. But so I think there could have been more discussions about slavery and anti-Blackness in Latin America as a whole, because like I didn't know until until college about Black Mexican populations, particularly on the Caribbean coast. Like that's just not something that really got talked about. So I thought it was very interesting. It's very much like I said, a starting point. I would be interested in seeing like if there's kind of more in-depth books out there, but definitely worth picking up. And then the other book, I picked this up because the author did an interview on This Podcast Will Kill You, which is like one of my favorite ways of finding nonfiction science books. And it's called Crossings: How Road Ecology is Shaping the Future of Our Planet by Ben Goldfarb. And this is a really interesting nonfiction book because the author really gets into how roads and our construction of roads and how we use roads impacts nature in a lot of different ways. So he talks, roadkill, which I feel is kind of the general, like everyone thinks about roadkill, but it also talks about its impacts on amphibians and reptiles, on insects, the noise pollution that happens with roads, the ecological impacts with abandoned roads, particularly in the national forests in the US, and like efforts to restore them. The last and so I enjoyed it, but I feel like the last chapter felt kind of tacked on, and so this was more talking about urban roads and how it affects people, specifically Black and brown communities. And I think it was something that to me read like it wasn't the author's primary area of interest, and it, like I said, it felt very tacked on and kind of detached from the rest of the book. And I almost kind of wish he hadn't included it, because I feel like it's something that deserved more than one chapter, especially given his central thesis on the impacts of roads. But I think, Rachel, this sounds like it was something I think you might enjoy.
Yeah, I was thinking like, I think I might find that interesting. Yeah.
It was a good science book, popular science book, in that it took something that is very commonplace and we don't necessarily think too much about and kind of really dug deep into it.
Mainly, I mean, I've seen multiple projects where people are creating the animal crossings.
Yeah, they talk about that. They talk about
that's the only aspect of the problem I've really seen anything about is the projects to combat it, but not really how it affects like more than just migratory or territorial crossings and stuff like that. So what's the name of the book again?
Crossings: How Road Ecology is Shaping the Future of Our Planet.
Ben Goldfarb.
Yep.
Adding it to the read list.
Yeah, like I said, this is definitely something you would like.
Yeah.
And then, and the last book not last, but like, I also read City in Glass by Nevo.
I think I saw you loved this as much as I did.
I did. I finished it. I'm like, God, we are so lucky to be alive right now while Nevo's writing.
Yes.
This is automatically like my number one best novel rec for Hugo nominations. Like, this is my first 5-star read of all the 2024 releases I've read so far.
I'm waiting to buy that because like at this point I'm just gonna like the only book of Nevo's that like from her backlog that I haven't read is the Gatsby
I need to read
retelling.
that, and I need to
And
read Siren Queen.
I
still.
DNF'd that one, and for some reason I thought that because I didn't really care for that one, I wouldn't really like The City in Glass. So y'all need to like talk this book up to me. Like, should I?
This scratches so many particular itches for me. It is a city book that is about sort of like what makes cities tick and what makes them exciting and alive and all of that. And like, that's one of these like the very specific things that I like in fantasy books. It's about a demon who, her name is Vitrine, and her like fixation, her obsession, her like project of generations and centuries is this city called Azrael that she is like intervenes in the lives of people that she finds particularly interesting in order to help make the city more interesting. And because she's a demon, there's this sort of like moral grayness to that. But like, she loves this city, and then angels come and destroy the entire city with no explanation. That is the very beginning of the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a spoiler. That's like the first
That's the inciting
chapter of the
incident
book.
of the book.
Exciting incident of the book. But then in that wake, you're dealing with like her years of extreme grief as she starts to like clear through the wreckage and prepare to have the city rebuild. And you get flashbacks of like all of the different people that were special to her in this city over its life, and like how she came there. And one of the angels who destroyed the city, she curses him by putting a bit of herself inside of him so he can't go back with the other angels, and he's banished. And he keeps coming back and like watching her, and trying to figure out like,
he's like, he wants her to fix him. He wants her to remove the part of herself that she left in, and she's like, no, you like, I have to live with this, so do you.
And then he gets more involved with what she's doing. And it is the other thing this does that scratches a very particular itch for me, in addition to the city thing, is the like approach to the scope of history and time and like eras of history, but in a way that makes it very personal by like focusing on these snapshots in time. And the writing is beautiful. It's all a little like, this is the first novel of Nevo's that I read. I'd previously only read the Singing Hills Cycle novellas, and this is stylistically more abstract than the Singing Hills Cycle books. It's more stylized, a little more dense to unpack, I think, and I really liked that.
Yeah, I agree. I think like my one minor quibble is we never find out really about the angels or where they came from, or like why they targeted the city. And I think for me, like that kind of like, it didn't take away my enjoyment. I loved the book, but it was like a very minor quibble for me. But I loved Vitrine and how Nevo really sat with the weight and the impact of what she lost, and like how the city was rebuilt. It wasn't the same, it was different, but it was kind of like finding joy and finding happiness after this really cataclysmic event.
Okay, I haven't read the book, but I actually like in terms of like if you think about like it as a kind of almost colonial narrative, I do think it might be also kind of poignant not knowing why the attackers attack, because when you're in the ground
I mean, you say
being
angels.
affected.
You say angels. The first thing I go to is like, how did things happen in the Bible? You don't get an explanation, like, or you could just say the explanation is
Right.
somewhere in the background. Somebody decided this was bad, but instead it gives you
Right. And
perspective on what the
this
city
is
was really like.
secondary world fantasy. So yes, they're angels and demons, but it's not Christianity angels and demons. So like where the angels come from is this heaven they got orders from someone or something or some power, but like, you know, you never really learn what any of that is, other than the angels are almost like a force of nature. Like they come with their marching orders and they wreak destruction because and you know, that's heartbreaking in its own way, that you can't ever have the answer to why, you know, it feels like it feels like a natural disaster, right? Except it's a supernatural disaster.
A literal act of God.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was a minor quibble. It was just kind of like, because we got explanations for demons and how they were created. And it was just like, okay, but like...
Yeah, but we only got a little bit of an explanation for demons and how they were created. Like, we could have gotten into more of that. And I wouldn't have minded. Because the book description makes it feel like it's very much about the angel and the demon, but Vitrine is the only like true POV character. We don't get any of the book narrated from the angel's perspective. We don't even learn his name. It's so much more about her than it is about him. And the quibble I had was maybe about their relationship that develops. Like, is this meant to be romancy or is it not? It's a little bit nebulous in that regard, because neither of them are human and things are different for them. I will say, I was thinking about this and sort of came to the conclusion that the angel's role in the story is sort of to be a challenge to Vitrine. Like, we learn things about her based on how she responds to him and everything he's doing. You know, both in how he responds to her grief, and sort of then also how she responds to his like attempts to help and understand what she's doing. Because he becomes involved with her sort of reconstruction of the city the second time around. Anyways, this was just fascinating to me. I loved it. Any other thoughts? Di?
I really liked the glimpses. Like, we never leave the city. Like, we never go like abroad, but we still get a lot of glimpses of the wider world and what's going on through the people who come through the city. So I really liked that as well.
Yeah, it's the sort of world building where like you get just a lot of references dropped to other places. So you get the sense that there's this huge wide world with all sorts of things happening in it, but you don't need to see it to know that it's there.
Yeah. So that's what I read.
So yes, I also read this one. Let's see what else I feel like I had a lot that I can just sort of like touch on pretty quickly since we last spoke. I think the last book I talked about.
Interject really quickly. We've only got 30 minutes left on our time. Are we gonna want time to talk about media?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to rush through everything else pretty quick.
Yeah, I have a really long list of stuff too, so I'm just sort of gauging what else people may want to talk about today.
Yeah.
I ended up. I think the last thing I talked about on our last stream was the Siren Depths, right? So and then I was trying to finish this reading challenge by the end of the year. I finished Dark Lord of Dirkholm on audio this time. It got me through it. I will say, once I hit the second half of this book, it got like markedly more interesting and things got rolling in a way that I enjoyed a whole lot more than the first half. I think this book was done a disservice by the description on the back, which was both spoilery and mischaracterized the book, I think, in certain ways. So I ended up being really happy I gave this a second try, even though I still struggled with the first half. And then another 3-star read was The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This was just fine. Like, I have no major complaints about this. It's, very debut fantasy, very world building light, very political intrigue light. Not a whole ton of plot actually happens in this book. Like, our characters end up, getting maneuvered into a situation where they end up going on a dangerous journey in the desert. And then, like, by the end, you learn that something big has happened. And there's magic along the way and like action at, predictable intervals. It was fine. I will probably forget all about it relatively quickly. The Raven and the Reindeer, I haven't written a review for this yet, but I realized that like this was the last book I read in 2024. I read it on New Year's Eve, and I realized I had finally found the book that I could put in a double review with a warning about swans from way in the beginning of the year. I wrote a review of that. I was like, I need to pair something in this with a double review, so I never filmed the review. This is like the folklore, or not. It's a fairy tale retelling book that hardcore fans of fairy tale retellings should really read. 4 stars. And I'm planning on doing a full review of this. I just haven't written it yet.
Is that the Ice Queen retelling?
Snow Queen.
Snow Queen, sorry. Yes. Okay. I was trying to remember.
Snow Queen retelling. And then the first book I read in January was A Letter to the Luminous Deep by Sylvie Catherall. This one I actually do want to talk about a bit. I find this to be a really interesting example of a cozy fantasy that goes beyond the the sort of copy paste Legends and Lattes template for cozy fantasy. Like, this is doing something structurally different, but it's still very clearly cozy fantasy. It's an epistolary novel, and we're basically learning about these 2 characters who got to know each other via correspondence, who then subsequently both disappeared and are presumed dead. And then their siblings are like piecing together what happened to them by putting together a timeline of their letters, and they're also doing this over correspondence. So
you said this was cozy, but it sounds murderous.
It is not murderous.
Okay.
It is not. It is cozy, and it's light academia, and it's set in this world where basically there's very little land. There are only a few little islands, and then everything else is ocean. And also like society seems to be governed by academic institutions as far as I can tell, and it's one of these things where like, what the heck is going on with this world? You get to the end and like I have more questions at the end than I had at the beginning. But it's also very romantic and very sweet. And like, if you need to know in order to be assured that it's actually cozy, like they aren't actually dead.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Their siblings believe them to be dead, but something else happened. I would say the two. I don't really know which. I think of one of the characters as the protagonist, the main protagonist, but I think thinking back on it, that might just be like which character I identified with most. So maybe I shouldn't categorize it that way. Anyways, this is another book that like I gave this 4 stars. It's one of the more interesting 2024 releases I've read to me because it is doing something very different with cozy fantasy than what the archetype of cozy fantasy is. I don't know that it's 100% successful. Like there's some things that didn't totally work for me here, but it's a more interesting book than how I think some people might be presenting it. And then I read Stories of the Raxura Volume 1, which has 2 novellas and 2 short stories. The 2 novellas I both really enjoyed. The short stories both seemed a little superfluous, like they didn't contribute much of anything that I can imagine being really important in the series going forward. But of the 2 novellas, one of them is a direct continuation of the series, and then the second one is a prequel following different characters from like a previous generation of the colony. 4 stars for that collection. And then I read The City in Glass, and now what I'm reading Butcher of the Forest by Premi Mohammed, and I'm reading on my Kindle, oh gosh, I keep blanking on the title of this book. I'm finally getting to some of the things that have just been like sitting on my Kindle for ages because
This is a tangent, but can I see your Kindle case?
You've seen this before.
I have the jigsaw puzzle version of it.
I know, you told me last time you saw my Kindle case.
How did I forget this? I know that. Sorry, continue.
The company that I got this Kindle case from doesn't seem to exist anymore, which makes me really sad. But I'm trying to make myself get to some of the books that have been sitting on my Kindle for ages because I never like pick up my Kindle outside of Hugo voting packet season, and I'm making myself do that. So I'm reading Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. That's the title of the book. First in a trilogy that is self-published, that is now complete. I'm not very far in that though, but I'm glad to have finally picked it up. That is Regency historical fantasy about a spinster who is like 40 years old and lives with her sister's family and inherits what turns out to be a dragon egg that hatches from an eccentric relative.
It's always the eccentric relatives.
Yeah. So like I've gotten to the point where the dragon has hatched and not much further. Yeah, so that's what I've been reading. See, I told you I could get through it pretty quick.
All right. And I'm okay with going overtime if we have other stuff to talk about too.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
I do
I'm good as well.
thing.
Yep.
So. I read a lot since our last live show, so I'm gonna skim some of this stuff. Actually, I'll start with what I'm currently reading. So I've gotten back to the Foreigner series by CJ Cherry. I've been doing a long running buddy read of the series with Kazan from Always Doing, and after like I don't know, like a 2-year hiatus, we're finally back to it. I forget like what number Protector is, but that's the one we're on. And this is a very long running series. I think there's 23, 24 books in it now. And this one might be like book 30.
Is it still ongoing?
Yes.
Whoa.
I believe the latest installment came out last year, maybe or very recently.
Do you think Hugo Votors are gonna put it on like best series ever?
I don't know. That's an interesting question because it's the series has definitely been eligible for that category for a number of years, probably since the category was first announced. It's been very steadily published since, oh my God, I think the first book came out in 1998.
Whoa.
Maybe earlier than that. It was in the 90s. Maybe it was like 1990. God, the series might be as old as I am. Anyway, I love it. The series.
We're old, Rachel.
What?
I said we're old.
You know, none of you can complain about being old as long as I am in the room. So
I turned 35 in less than a month, and it kind of hit me that like I'm on that slide now to 40. It's like
I'm gonna turn 40 in 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years.
Rachel, you're like 6 months older than me.
What? Really?
Yeah, my birthday. I'm a 1990 baby. I'm in August.
I thought you were older than me. I would have sworn that you were older than me.
Nope.
I'm still the youngest one in the group, I think, by a little bit.
Yeah. So
We're
for
old,
once,
Rachel.
I'm feeling a little bit weird about my birthday. I'm like I'm not in my early 30s anymore. I'm closer to
Here's the
40.
thing. My birthday is like a week before Worldcon.
Oh,
Worldcon. So right now, the way it's sorry to detract. Right now, the way it's looking, my birthday will be going down to San Francisco for some basketball and some culture and some delicious food with my family, and then flying up to Seattle for Worldcon.
I mean,
let's go a little.
That does not sound bad.
So, Jill, when my mom turned 40, her coworkers threw her a black, like death-themed "You're 40 years old, you're old" party. Like everything was in black. They gave out hats with like just like medication boxes all over them and stuff. I remember this so vividly, and it's kind of hit me now. It's like, wait a minute, I'm coming up on that birthday. And I don't think I'm going to be that old.
This is okay. So I went to Disneyland for my 30th birthday, but my family, I remember my family going to Disneyland for my mom's 40th. I'm like, I was a child and I thought my mother was old. Oh no.
See, my
I'm going to be 42 in not that many years.
My parents were really young. Were like young for millennial or for boomer Gen Z cusps. My mom was 24 when I was born, so her 40th birthday was when I was 16.
See, the thing is that first of all, I hang around because of work and stuff with a lot of like 25, 26-year-olds. So sometimes I feel like I have no grasp of my actual age because of, I mirror the people I'm with like all the time. So I start acting like the 26-year-olds when I'm with the 26-year-olds. Like it's an ADHD thing as well. But like, so sometimes I get like this weird feeling of like, oh shit, I'm actually like almost 40. But it doesn't feel like that because like I like it. What the hell?
I don't know. Anyway, yes, 40 is the new 30. I feel that that's the way it should be. Yes. Okay, so I was going to talk about books. We're definitely going to go over time today.
Sometimes a bit. So Protector series, CJ Cherry.
Protector series. So yeah, I'm reading that. It's long-running science fiction series about a settlement of humans that ends up on an alien planet, and they, after hundreds of years, they kind of trade information between each other. The main character, it begins as just a translator between the humans and the Atevi, and it, over the course of the series, he basically becomes a member of the Atevi society. He becomes a lord of that society, and it's highly political, lots of political hijinks. They meet other alien species too. I love it. I could go on about this forever. So I've just started reading that. I'm about halfway through Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari, which is his latest nonfiction book. It's a chunky book. And this is all about kind of the history of information networks. It's trying to kind of build this connection between how information sharing happened in like the beginning of human civilization all the way up to artificial intelligence. And in the middle of the book, there's just a very long explanation of his theory about how information networks affect governments and like his definition of democracy and everything. I'm not explaining this very well. It is interesting, but I'm taking a lot of it with a grain of salt because I've never read anything really about this topic other than like pop sci books on information and like the beginning of the creation of the computer and stuff. So it's interesting, but it is it's taken me a while to get through it. And I also just started Dual Memory by Sue Burke. I'm trying to catch up on Burke's
I want to read that.
I went into this cold. I had forgotten I'd even pre-ordered the book, and it's been sitting on my shelf for a couple of years. Like, yeah, I should probably read that. And I have her other book in the Semiosis series that I want to read. So this begins in a future where it seems like it's almost like Doctors Without Borders has declared its own country and set up a nation built on top of a bunch of junk in the Arctic Circle. And people are fighting and there are pirates. And as far as I can tell, the main character is kind of like he was fighting against the pirates and now he's stranded on Thule. And I don't know where it's going to go from here, but I bet there's going to be a lot of ecological disaster. And the other main character is artificial intelligence, who is kind of like gathering data and jockeying to live its life, I think. So I think it's going to be interesting the further I get into it. Things I have read. I promised Rhea I talk about the sort of Irish version of
Yes, please.
Whiskey Business and stuff. I'm not saying they're the same thing, but they're that same genre of contemporary romance. So when I ran out of things to read by KJ Charles, I took one of her book recommendations and I read Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. And this
Morbidly Yours.
This follows a woman from Texas who is an animator. She works for an animation studio. And after her husband dies, she ends up going to Ireland on a contract to work for an animation studio there. And her next door neighbor is the local mortician.
Oh! I'm just reading the thing. Oh my God.
The dynamic is so good. Like, she's this outgoing blonde Texan. She's, extroverted, and she just bumps into this guy's life. The funeral home is in an old inn, and she still thinks it's an inn. So they meet when she walks in to the inn and expects it to be like an inn, and instead it's a funeral home. There are dead bodies in the back, and she doesn't know that. Anyway, they are really
okay. I just put it on my to read list.
I ate this up, and I think it's going to be another one of those romance series where like it's a trilogy that goes around with all the main characters mentioned in it. So like there's this guy named Adrian who's mentioned in this, and he's going to be one of the protagonists of the next book. So I love it.
They are, of course,
this whole, like an animator and like an animator, you get it, and a mortician.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It was ridiculously cute. So I love that, and I'll be continuing on with the series. Also, because I ran out of KJ Charles books to read, I decided to get back into Cat Sebastian's back catalog. I've never been as interested in reading more of her like Regency era romances. I read one of the series and was like, it's okay, but not my thing. But she has started writing queer historical romances set in, well, like Hither Page and Missing Page are 1920s, I think.
Yeah, I like those.
And now she's got
No.
like,
19.
Oh no, that the 1940s/50s. It's
and I thought it was after the First World War, not the second
no,
one.
it's post.
It's Second World War, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's been
it's
writing a lot of
channeling,
stuff in the
like,
1950s up to the 1970s. So I read the other book in her mid-century New York series called You Should Be So Lucky.
I have
and
that checked out right now.
I have it on my
loved
Kobo.
this. I really liked the first one, which was We Could Be So Great, 5 stars all around. And You Should Be So Lucky is about a baseball player and a news reporter. Actually, he's more like an arts and culture reporter, but he's not really working very much because grief. I thought that I wouldn't get into this one as much because it is really heavy on the baseball. And if there is any sport I would like to never know more about, it is baseball. Despite that, super loved this. Like this mid-century series is Cat Sebastian's best work. Like when she stopped or wasn't always doing it like Regency era stuff. Yeah. So really loved it. And if you want contemporary queer romance set in New York City and kind of exploring New York City culture of that era as well, that was great. And then I read the 2 latest releases from Neon Hemlock, which Kelsey talked about this last time, The Transitive Properties of Cheese by Anne LeBlanc. Or was that whichever one? We talked about this sometime last live show.
Yeah.
I also loved this novella. Like I was inspired to pick it up after last time. It's like, oh, actually that sounds like it'll be a fun read for right now. I loved it. It was like the perfect story for novella length, and there was way more detail and kind of deep stuff, like transhumanist stuff in it than I expected. It was so good. This one is absolutely making it to my Hugo ballot, like for sure. I'm going to nominate it. And then the other one from Neon Hemlock that I read, I'm going to call this a novella because it's that length, but I don't actually know how to categorize this. It's North Continent Ribbon by Ursula Witcher. I went into it thinking it was just a novella, but it's kind of like a fix-up novella of stories, mostly stories that she's previously published. And it's just there. I think the description of it does compare it to Ursula Le Guin, and I completely agree with that. It's different in its own way, but in this series of sci-fi stories about how people live in this culture on this alien planet, it is really social sci-fi. It's really about people's relationships and contracts with each other, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I kind of had wished that it would have been a more continuous story, but also having never read anything else by Ursula Witcher, I was just happy that I got to read this. It was really good. So I hope that she will continue like writing in this world. I will read more of it in a heartbeat. So I'm hoping it would also be a novella like nominee. I will probably try to nominate it in that category too. I can never remember whether it matters or not that previously published stories are part of these things. So I'm going to nominate it.
Is there new material in it?
I'm not entirely sure. I didn't look that far into it. Just, I saw the publication dates of a couple of the chapters on her website, so I knew that it wasn't all original material. But anyway, highly recommend, especially if you love Ursula Le Guin's like social sci-fi short stories, the kind of things that kind of center around a theme or a place, like a certain culture, but the stories are not otherwise really connected. It was really good.
just an update. I have finished all the greens.
Yay!
It looks very thistly now.
Mhm.
Yes. Now it's only missing the flowers and then the backing, and then it's done.
Yeah.
Continue.
I have no idea what centralist lib means, but I have been impressed by the range of examples that Harari gives in Nexus. Like, he is Israeli. He's an Israeli citizen. I don't know if he still lives there or not, but he doesn't shy away from talking about some of that and using it as examples of like policy based on information blocks and stuff like that. Once again, I don't know how to talk about that stuff very well. But there's a reason why I'm taking some of it with a grain of salt, because, you know. And then the other two books that I read by Kat Sebastian were part of her Cabot series, which is like 40s to the 70s, I think. One is Peter Cabot Gets Lost, and the other one is Daniel Cabot Puts Down Roots. And once again, these are really, I think like in every single one of these, Sebastian has like in her acknowledgement said, thank you to everybody who really enjoys reading these books where people really don't do anything except pine for each other and go on road trips.
I have both of these books on my Kobo.
I think you would enjoy both of them. I really liked Peter Cabot Gets Lost. That's the road trip one where Peter, they're leaving after graduation at college. He offers to take one of his classmates from the East Coast all the way out to LA. They don't really know each other, but they may have sort of had crushes on each other. And yeah, it's just a road trip story. And they become a couple over the course of a lot of driving. And despite the era, they do a lot of smooching because they're in the middle of nowhere by themselves in a car and nobody can see them.
I mean, if you're gonna be in the privacy of your car, you can do so many things.
Yeah. I would not want to spend that much time in hotel rooms, though. Not conducive to romance, in my opinion, but I'm a homebody. What can I say? What else did I read that I want to talk about? One more thing. I finally got back to the Russell and Holmes mystery series by Laurie R. King. For anybody who doesn't know, this has been a long-running series by her, which is part of the Sherlockian world, basically.
I have a bit of gossip about this after you finish talking about this book.
Okay. My only quibble about the Russell and Holmes series is that Mary Russell meets a much, much older Sherlock Holmes when she is barely a teenager. I think she's like 14 or 15 in the first book when she meets him. He is already middle-aged and retired to the countryside. Within a couple of years, they are married. And the older I get, the squeakier this gets. And yet I keep reading the books because I really enjoy them.
I used to read that series and I stopped. So actually, the gossip I have is related to that. So Laurie R. King, her husband, he's since passed, was a former professor at UC Santa Cruz where my grandfather taught. And it was a minor scandal that he got with one of his students, Laurie R. King.
How much older was
and then married her. I don't know how much older, but like, yeah, my Grammy, I was talking about something else with my Grammy and she was like, oh yeah, it was like a huge scandal in the faculty, like when it happened. Because it's like, it's okay if you sleep with your student, just don't marry them.
There is a...
I worked with somebody who she went through the same thing. She married a university professor when she was very young, and I was like, wow, that happens outside of books.
Yeah, anyway, like my Grammy told me that, and I'm like, oh my god, so much in the that murder.
That explains
makes
so much
more sense. It's like one of those things where it's like you don't necessarily need to know anything about the author, but like sometimes there's like a piece of information that you get and just like contextualizes everything.
That makes so much more sense.
There is this saying, which kind of shows the trend of like men in workplaces marrying like either subordinates and stuff. But in Finnish, there's this saying called "syödä kuormasta," which is basically means that you're eating your own produce or your own product, which refers strictly to like usually teachers getting together with their students.
Anyway, it was sorry,
So,
like
in your gaps. Yeah, that I would agree. Although I'll say in my family, I'm not going to name names, but in my family, there have been marriages where there's a 10 and 15-year difference, but in both of them, it's the woman who's much older.
I
So
would
that's
say-
kind of like what I grew up with, like that's okay.
I would say that like the older the people, the less the gap matters. Like for example, if you are like the younger person is 30 and the older person is like 40, I think the gap doesn't matter. But when it's like a 20-year-old, like the younger person is like 20 or 18, I'm side-eyeing the person who is like.
So in the Language of Bees, which is the one I just read, I think in this one it stated that Mary Russell is 24 at this point. She's been married to Sherlock for 3 or 4 years now. He is stated to be like mid to late 50s. So there is at least a 30-year gap between them.
Yeah, I'm like yeah, no.
Yeah, I did read some of them. I think I stopped reading when they went to San Francisco.
You know, that's where I took a really big break too. I hadn't read anything in the series for like 3 years and came back to it. So yeah, but I do really like the series. Aside from the squick factor of the age gap in the relationship, I think the writing is really strong. A lot of the stories are pretty hard hitting in the way they talk about like justice and what happens to people in this era. You know, it's right after the First World War. I think it was Justice Hall was the one that hit me so hard in the feels. It was about a young soldier who he was basically murdered by he was blamed for something so that he would be shot while he was in the army, and nobody knew about it. And that one got to me so much. Anyway, Language of Bees is the first part of a story, though. This is the first time the series has done this, where you have to read the next book to get the conclusion to the mystery. And I don't know how I feel about it, because it was already quite a long book, but it has to do with family matters for Sherlock. So I'm pretty invested in it. So I will continue with the series. But yeah, every time I pick up one of these books, I think, how many scenes am I going to go, why are you married?
Yeah, so speaking of Sherlock stuff, I do want to reread the Irene Adler series by Carol Nelson Douglas. Like, I know there's some, like, I haven't read them in a while, but there's like some really problematic Romani descriptions or like depictions, which is why it's like not something I like would really recommend, but I really liked it because Irene Adler is great. It's like one of the only series where it like doesn't do a romance between Irene and Sherlock. Like, they are foils, they are like antagonists, they're people who like are very smart in similar ways, but Irene has her own love story, and I love her husband a lot.
I will say that in most cases, like Romani representation by non-Romani authors is not the best, even when well-intentioned.
I totally agree with this, Ramsey, especially because in this series, like repeatedly, it's kind of hammered home that the women that Sherlock has been with absolutely ran his life. Like he did not have a say in anything. I was like, I don't think that he was that invested. He wasn't really paying attention. Anyway, that's what I've been reading.
So
Have some current events to discuss.
yeah, like a couple.
Well, we have already gotten questions about our feelings on TikTok and Book Talk, so you want to kick us off on that, Kelsey?
Yeah, so right before we went live, it turns out that TikTok is back after disappearing like last night before we thought, I had assumed it would go dark like at midnight, and it went dark before that. Personal note about my Book Talk. I managed to set my account to private like just as it was shutting down in the US, and I'm keeping my account private for now, even though it's back, just to sort of see what the news is come tomorrow and the next few days about this. The notification, I took a screenshot earlier. There is a notification on the app saying, "Welcome back. Thanks for your patience and support. As a result of President Trump's efforts, TikTok is back in the US. You can continue to create, share, and discover all the things you love on TikTok." So clear, like there's obvious like sucking up to the incoming administration to try and get favor. What I see happening here, just in terms of like the chronology of events, is that the 90-day extension that has been promised, but obviously it won't go into effect technically until tomorrow, is meant under the current law that was passed and signed and upheld by the Supreme Court to only give the 90-day extension for, you know, the purposes of the sale of TikTok to an American company or entity. So I don't know if there's any path forward that doesn't involve that sale. People don't seem to be talking about like what happens if Congress decides to like pass another bill to repeal the previous one. That theoretically could happen, but the sort of what I'm getting the sense of is that you know, Book Talk has been the past, you know, days and weeks looking into alternatives. Like I personally have been experimenting, uploading a couple videos to YouTube Shorts, and I'm watching right now to see how those perform, to see what YouTube does with them, because I haven't been uploading shorts before. And, you know, people are trying Instagram Reels. Much has been made of TikTok migration to Xiaohongshu Redbook, which I think started out of spite, and then some people are maybe staying because they enjoy it there. I don't see Book Talk doing that. I don't imagine that's a viable alternative for Book Talk, and I don't see the Book Talk creators that I follow going that route. But like, if it turns out that, you know, Meta buys TikTok, are the creators who are enjoying TikTok right now going to want to stay there? I think we'll still see a sort of migration away from it.
Well, I mean, weren't people just ditching Threads recently because Meta?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I also think that Book Talk, it will survive in some form, but I think a lot of the creators who are really championing diverse books, who are like really talking about how reading is political, who are very much not in the let's talk about romance or let's talk about romantasy or dark romance, they're the ones who aren't necessarily going to be coming back based on some conversations I've seen on Blue Sky and in Discord servers because of how TikTok handled the shutdown and the revamp, because it was very much it was a publicity stunt for Trump. Like, when it comes back, it's not going to be the same. And I think that it will take some time to shake out to see what the difference is. But I think that a lot of the creators because I will say I don't have TikTok because I know myself and how I use social media. Yeah. And I knew it would be something I would get really addicted to. So I just didn't sign up in the first place. I think a lot of the people who I would be following are not going to be coming back, or if they do, it's going to be in a very reduced capacity based on what concessions TikTok had to make to Trump. Like, I don't think it's going to be the same platform.
There's a comment that I want to respond to here about, isn't TikTok data stored in Oracle in Texas anyway? And so yes, I think there's definitely a lot of frustration about, the idea that the ban and the threat of it, the legislation has all happened because, the American tech bro incoming oligarchs have been lobbying to either shut down or be able to purchase their biggest, competition, right? And that's all very cynical to think about. And, that it's going to succeed. And then the legislation in question, people voted for it without really caring what was in it, in part because it was lumped into a bill for Ukraine aid, I think. So people, Congress people felt they had to vote for it, even though it was stupid, which is just very dumb. Obviously, it's not. We haven't. The public has not seen any evidence of the actual national security threat that we're being assured exists.
Okay.
So there's a lot of reasonable skepticism about that.
So the thing is, as data residency is a thing, for example, even if TikTok is owned by ByteDance, its operation in the United States, United States could potentially demand that they are data residency compliant in the US only for US users, if they want to operate the app in the United States. So basically there's already a precedent. Like, for example, with EU, we have GDPR, and also there's ISO standards for security and such that govern data residency and all of this kind of stuff for data handling, privacy, etc., etc. So there's already those standards and options in place without this law being a thing in the first place. Second of all, this law is very vague in its wording. It's not meant just for TikTok. It's meant for basically any major company that has a large user base in the US that is a foreign influence, so to speak. We have already seen this with Tencent being categorized as a Chinese military company. Tencent, if you don't know, is the parent organization that owns Riot Games, who you might know of such things as League of Legends and recently the show Arcane. So Tencent is currently facing some heat from the US government, and I think that is specifically because of the TikTok ban law, which is not going to be a TikTok ban law. It's going to be any foreign app law. So TikTok is just gonna be the precedent, basically. And I just feel like it's really dangerous in terms of like US hegemony.
It's definitely been a very dystopian feeling these past 24 hours, like watching this drama unfold, because no one really knew what to expect from the app actually going dark, like whether it would be accessible with VPN or not. For me, I was not able to access it with VPN. And I've heard from other people who also were not able to access it with VPN.
Yeah. There's also the thing that when it comes to data collection, currently Meta collects even more data, like practically the same amount. If you look at their terms of service when you sign up, like what kind of privileges you're giving the apps when you sign up, like stuff, you are granting the same amount of data to Meta as you would to TikTok. And the thing with Meta is, as we've seen with like Facebook's influence, for example, in the coup in Myanmar and stuff, like they sell your data to other like countries. So it's basically like the same shit. Okay, so this is just a control grab, and I think part of it is because of like the political organizing that happens in TikTok.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like for example, a lot of the stuff like the protests and boycotts and stuff and also in terms of like the visibility, for example, the genocide in Gaza, like had like TikTok boosted a lot of that to more people, that was more visible. So this is definitely a grab more for control and to stop people from organizing.
I'm going to say maybe to that, but I think it's more xenophobia more than anything else. It's xenophobia. I don't think they necessarily care as much about the organizing or like sharing information, because TikTok is also an incredibly useful platform for disinformation, and I think that's something that gets brushed under the rug when people are talking or like looking at it as this perfect platform for sharing information. I actually think TikTok is more dangerous for sharing misinformation and disinformation because of the way the app is, because you can't easily exit and fact check others. And I think the way that the videos are organized, it makes it much more difficult to go back and look at older information. So I think like part of what made like RIP Twitter, like part of what made Twitter so great in terms of being able, like going back and looking at the record, and people would have screenshots of the things and you could very easily trace things back. And you could also do that on Tumblr, for example, where reblogs are circulating that I saw when I first fucking signed up for that website in 2010. Like, I think TikTok, people are fond of it because it feeds their dopamine, and I think it like their algorithm does boost things, but I think people really discount how TikTok is used to really platform disinformation, how it's led to kind of this resurgence in trad wives. I think that's something like you can really trace back to TikTok.
This is going on a tangent because my brain had heard like something in what you said and kind of went in a different direction. But there are two different sides to like people liking TikTok. People liking it as a consumer of the content, and creators liking it as a platform for their content. You know, it's really impossible to discount the amount of creators who are really depending on TikTok and the visibility it gives their small businesses, that the platforms they have give them. So yeah, there's the kind of addictiveness of the algorithm, which is like at best morally neutral, And then there's
So
the opportunities that it provides creators.
So I will say, like working in the tech industry, that every single one of these apps, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, the apps and like the software is designed in a way that it wants to drive you to stay as long on the app as possible. This is not just a TikTok thing. Instagram does the same thing. Facebook does the same thing. It wants you to engage and stay longer with the content, and usually drives you to more radical content as you go on. We talk about the pipelines and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok has just basically perfected it. It has basically just perfected that algorithm. That is why it is hence dangerous. But I don't think, like, for example, that the US wants to ban it to protect its citizens. That's why they want to buy it, because they want to be able to control the disinformation and misinformation. Because let's face it, a lot of the misinformation right now, for example, on the US side of the user base, is right-wing, like conspiracy theories.
And my impression, although this could be wrong, this is not based on fact. My impression is that TikTok, as it has been leaning left wing, including in its disinformation. There is obviously the conservative tradwife content, but it is the place where we saw Gaza happen live, right?
And I think for me, it like, I understand that, but it's hard for me to buy it when you think about the books that are platformed by Book Talk, where I would argue there are a lot of small c conservative. It's a lot of male and female. I think a lot of dark romance boils down to that as well. It's like, he's violent, but not towards me. I think it's a lot.
I also think what the TikTok algorithm does really well in the customizing your experience aspect of it is it does sort of funnel people into communities where, like, lots of people feel like they found really great communities on there doing, the sorts of content that they aren't finding other places, right? But it also does affect everyone's impression of what the app as a whole is. Because there is and I noticed this in myself as well, a tendency to sort of assume that the app as a whole is what I'm seeing on it.
Yeah.
That's not what everyone is seeing on it.
You're technically driven to a kind of echo chamber, in a sense. Your algorithm is feeding you the stuff that you interact with and what you want to see. Whereas, for example,
I would say that I'm like, I was always seeing some sort of political punditry on TikTok, but that was always a very, very small percentage of what I was seeing on TikTok. I was, it kept sort of cycling through different things to try on me. Like, do you want to watch lots of horse videos because you liked this one horse?
I would also like, because I'm not a TikTok user, I have because the same as with Dai, I'm also very easily addicted to a dopamine rush that these apps bring, and it, I've started limiting my Instagram exposure because of this. But having talked to people who do use TikTok, and they send me sometimes the links to these, and I follow a lot of the commentary around it, so I'm kind of familiar, but obviously take it with a grain of salt because I'm not a user. However, I do use Instagram Reels, and Instagram definitely pushes you to more towards, even if you're interacting with left-wing content, you at some point start to see more right-wing stuff. For example,
that never happened with me on TikTok.
Yeah, but that is what I'm saying. That it's like
pushed towards right-wing stuff.
Yeah, but that is what I'm saying. That the algorithm funnels you into an echo chamber in TikTok.
I kept trying to be funneled into left-wing stuff, and I think mostly I kept sort of telling the algorithm, no, I don't actually want political stuff on this app. I want to see more kittens. But
But I will say that, for example, I follow like gym content somewhat, and the pipeline from like very innocuous gym content that is just like, okay, let's train your like RDL or whatever, and then it very fast becomes a fast track of like, okay, now it's starting to lean more towards, for example, some transphobic talking points, because now we're talking about who is man enough and woman enough and stuff like this, and it's very it's really off-putting when you see it in like real time. And this is definitely a trend that is happening on Instagram, especially. And now there are new terms.
I don't post reels on Instagram. Instagram is just pictures of my cat. But people from Book Talk who have tried reels seem to be reporting that they get clearly the wrong people watching their videos and leaving unpleasant comments, and they don't want to be there.
Yeah. But yeah,
so
it's
clearly
it's
the Instagram algorithm is not as advanced as the TikTok algorithm in terms of
no, I would not
your
say
content to the right people. I think it's not as creator friendly.
I would actually say that Instagram and YouTube algorithms work exactly the way that they are intended to. Because the whole thing is that
they want you to be angry.
Yes, they want you to be angry, and they want you to funnel into specifically content that is extreme, that makes you leave angry comments and engage, and then it pushes you more of that content. It is working exactly as intended.
You leave angry comments on like small creators' videos, those creators are going to stop posting on your platform, right? So that's what's happening with like Book Talk creators trying Instagram Reels and immediately saying, nope, I can't do this.
I don't think that Instagram has a problem with that.
I don't either.
Care about little people being pushed off. They want the big accounts with,
and especially since they since Meta just updated the terms of service to remove fact checkers and allow, for example, transphobic rhetoric on their platform, because it is now not included as hate speech.
But when we're specifically looking at the book community, like I don't think Instagram is gonna win.
Instagram cares. That's what Raya's point is. Instagram.
Right. No, I'm not talking about like the bigger, like what's going on with the social media platforms. I'm talking about Book Talk.
Okay.
Instagram is not going to win over the Book Talkers.
And I don't,
their algorithm as it is. And I think YouTube is like, people are actually going to BookTube, but I don't know if they'll stay or if the algorithm is going to make them unhappy.
I am going to say something controversial, but I personally prefer Bookstagram over, like, so a lot of the bigger creators have already cross-posted their Book Talk videos to Instagram Reels basically for a longer period of time, and original Bookstagrammers have started creating Reels way back when. So Bookstagram is basically like, it is kind of an amalgamation of photo content and video content right now. And I will say, I much prefer Bookstagram discourse in Reels than Book Talk discourse. It is more nuanced. Usually it has more like actual review and like intersectionality, whereas I think Book Talk very much is all about vibes. Like that, like just my opinion. Obviously, there are different types of book talkers.
I'm just seeing,
but like
the popular ones, the creators I'm following all starting YouTube channels, and I hope they stay because this is my main platform, right?
I do think we need to wrap up because I need to eat. It is past 1:30 for me, and I have.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to leave in a little bit as well. So,
maybe before we leave, this is not gonna be a discussion. Rather, this is more of a like since since a few days ago, the other relevant topic of this week, aside from the TikTok thing, that happened was the renewed allegations against Neil Gaiman due to the Vulture article that came out. So Neil Gaiman is now accused by at least 8 women right now of sexual misconduct and assault. And just as a general through line that we are not, in Stitch and Bitch, we are not going to platform Neil Gaiman. So we won't be talking about any books or any intellectual properties that he is associated with. And that includes, for example, adaptations of his work. So we will continue not to platform him. And just want to say that we support the victims that have come public with their stories. And this is not going to be a discussion. So just so you know, for future reference, why we won't be, for example, talking about Sandman.
And also a note
Yes.
of care if you haven't been following all this and you haven't read the Vulture article, it is intense, and you should definitely read the content warnings before getting into that.
Yes.
Yeah, I read the entire article and it fucked me up for the rest of the day. So
Yeah.
like, take care of yourself.
All right. Do we have any? Yes, Ramsey. Do we have any final thoughts on things that we've enjoyed that we want to talk about in the last couple of minutes that we are here? End on a happy note.
I watched season 2 of Squid Game, and also the first season of Squid Game. I enjoyed Squid Game. I finally got over my aversion to hype, and 3 years later, I finally was able to watch Squid Game, and I enjoyed it.
Talk about media at all. I can put off the one thing I watched till next month. I saw the animated film Flow, which won. What award did it win? Did it win the Golden Globe for animated
I think it
film?
did.
Yeah. So I have thoughts on that one, but I can wait till next month.
The only media I've really been watching is Unrivaled, Go Lunar Owls, Hootie Hoo. It's the new women's 3-on-3 basketball league.
I need to know how many playthroughs of Veilguard you have now.
I've been good. I finished my 4th playthrough, and I think it like my Dragon Age brainworms are like settled right now, because like I'm not feeling the urge to start a new playthrough like I was with the other ones.
I will be surprised if you're not up to 5 by next time.
I mean, I don't think so. I finally went back and started Horizon Zero Dawn replay because they released the PS5 remaster, and if you already own the game on PS4, it's only $10. So I'm like, you know what? Why not?
Damn it! Oh man, I should replay Horizon.
I'm replaying. I already know I'm going to be a mess when Silent shows up because
Lance
I
Reddick.
love his character. He's such an asshole. I love his dynamic with Aloy, and I miss Lance Reddick so much.
I know.
I don't know what they're going to do in the 3rd game because like they need to have Silence, but I don't know if anyone else could play him.
They did recast Lance Reddick because he was in the Percy Jackson
they recast
series.
him with Courtney Vance. So I have a feeling they'll recast because like I think they need Silence in the game, but they haven't announced anything yet.
Yeah.
And with the voice actors strike, I don't know when that's going to happen.
All right. Anything else?
I'm good.
Next month we're gonna be on my channel.
Yes.
So.
Thank you for remembering that. I don't remember how we end these things anymore, so we're just gonna say goodbye.
Remember, nominations open January 1st. We are eligible for Best Fan Cast.
Not January 1st. We don't know when they open yet.
Sorry. No, nominations open on the 31st, I think.
That's the deadline for buying your membership to be
Mm.
eligible to nominate. We don't actually know what day they're
Oh
open
shit! I
other
need to
than
buy my
two.
membership. Oh god.
I don't have my membership either.
If you have
Payday is on the
Jazzo
31st.
membership, you're eligible to nominate already. So like,
yeah, but I
don't-
need to buy my membership.
Okay,
yeah.
so first thing on next month agenda is catching up on Hugo stuff. We will have more to say about that then. Until then.
Also, I'm now on Blue Sky.
Yes, you
with,
can find all of us on Blue Sky.
yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna really wrap up now. Everybody take care of yourselves. I think we're in for a real bumpy time. It's not gonna be fun, but take care of yourselves and do what you need to not get overwhelmed by the world. So read some good books, watch some good television, play Veilguard 4 times.
And
whatever.
Baldur's Gate.
And Baldur's
And
Gate.
Hades too.
And Hades too, yeah. So
Listen to Epic the Musical.
all right. Bye.